Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. File,
Here.
Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias.
Yes. Okay, are there any visitors who wish to address the board? No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
And Mr. McDermott, will you please present the financial reports?
Sure. On the investment report, really no major changes. Operating balances went down a little over $543,000 over April. And that variance is due to regular operating and payroll expenses. And the only thing on interest rates are that treasury rates are starting to tick up, yet CD rates, where we mainly would invest, have not followed. So they're still holding steady, but very low. Any questions on the investment report before I move on? On the year-to-date fund summary, I won't go into too much detail here because of the information I provided in the amended budget hearing. The changes in our projections are mainly due to those changes in those revenue line items and reductions in expenses in the operating funds. So the current projection that ended May shows the operating fund balance a surplus of a little over 161,000. And then some other minor changes in some of the other funds. But overall, it continues to improve. And I really expect that number to improve by the end of June as well. Any questions on the fund summary?
Okay. The bills, payroll, and treasurer's report are included in your packet for review. Are there any questions on the bills? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the bills, payroll, and treasurer's report as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. File.
Yes.
Okay, we have approval of the amended budget fiscal year 21, which was just presented at our 6:15 public hearing. Is there any further discussion or questions regarding the amended budget for fiscal year 21? Okay, is there a motion to approve the amended budget for fiscal year 21 as presented? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, there are administrator and director reports included in our packet to read, and each administrator or director can give highlights. Mr. Reed, would you like to start?
Sure. In the Rochester Electric package, just our end of the year discipline summaries, which were excellent, grade reports, SEL summer reports from our Castle survey that we did, attendance reports, anything you may have questions on, you can certainly ask next month. We'll put it ahead of time today. And we also put in our results from some of our assessment scores and grade level. So we did give you some feedback on how many students did not make grade level as far as their report card. On the K1, we gave you any students that received 2 or more marks in grade levels for needs improvement categories, which is our lowest category. We had very few and the percentages were low. Our third grade actually had 0% D's or F's this year, so that was great. Second grade was pretty low, so was first grade. So good end of the year reports, but what a crazy year and a fun year we ended up with. But for all in all, the reports for the end of the year were very good. Mrs. Ross has been working really hard on the current schedule for next year, as well as myself, getting ready for some of the new state mandates that will be on elementary students, especially with the extended playtime. So we'll make sure that gets into the schedule as well. And then starting the year off with some intervention students that receive intervention services at the end of the year will continue right off the bat once the school year starts. So we'll take off right where we left off. So make sure those kids didn't miss a whole lot for the summertime. That's pretty much our end of the year report. And if you have any questions, you can certainly ask.
Thank you. Mrs. Gary?
Similar to Mr. Reed, our end of the year reports are in that summary for you guys. We are still working on class lists, and we're going to resume that next week, and we should have that done very shortly. I wanted to point out we had 76 grade students on honor roll this year, which is really awesome. And congratulations to Mallory Fox and Abigail Luking for winning the Rachel Sperry Award for 6th grade. We included that information in our end of the year report, and there's like a presentation with all of our fun Olympics things in there as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Poole?
So we included some information about our end of the year celebrations with both 7th graders and 8th graders. A different format again this year due to the circumstances, but it was well received by our students and parents, so we were excited about that. I also included some information. We continue to work on our junior high jumpstart, which we've renamed to our rocket launch program. So I had a group of teachers who came in and spent a day or so hammering out all of the activities that we're going to do with our students, and we're super excited about that.
Mr. Ashbaugh?
My report was really small because I'm already pretending it's the fall of 21. I'm so ready for this year to be done. So if you noticed, all I put in there was a lot of the activities that we hope to restart back up next year, things that we didn't get to do this year, which it seemed was kind of frustrating, a lot of kids' activities and things. So hopefully all those things on that list are things we'll get to do. Like I know Big Buddy was a big one that I know the kids like to do and missed, and we'll do that. And then the other big thing is that we pulled off graduation, and the weather was beautiful, and it was a beautiful night, and it went really well. I was pleasantly surprised, and actually it was really nice outside. And from what I'm hearing from the senior parents, the pictures were phenomenal. Being outside might be the best pictures that they've ever gotten at the graduation.
Yeah.
So.
I think we all received a lot of positive comments on that too.
And one parent even said to me, I didn't think I was going to like it, and I loved it.
I will tell you, I did chuckle. I might have said something to Dan when we were getting ready to come out. I go, I never thought I would see the day when people were hauling out their bag chairs to go to the Rochester graduation. So, but it was kind of unique, but it really worked. So.
Yeah, good. And Mr. Alwell or Mr. McGurk? Okay.
I just put the packet we wrapped up our spring sports seasons.
Okay.
Very successful spring season all around. Colleen Zebra highlighted by Colleen. She got 3rd and 5th at state for 2 events. She's a sophomore, so that was great. Then we got a couple of sectional finals teams qualified, and then boys practice wrapped up this weekend. So already into summer stuff. Get yourself football teams outside of the.
I did too as he came in.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions for any of our administrators or directors? Okay, Mr. Cox, will you please provide the superintendent's report?
All right, everybody hear me okay?
Not yet,
Yes.
hold on. Testing, one more time, try it.
All right, everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Can we turn it up a little bit here? Try again?
All right, how about now?
That's better,
better.
thank you.
That's better.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you. And before I get started, thank you for everyone, the board especially, for the flexibility to allow me to do this. This is the first time in my career that I've not been physically present for a school board meeting. So in a year, a lot of firsts. I guess we're wrapping it up with another first for me to close out our fiscal year 21. So we're getting ready to drop off number 2 to college tomorrow. And it's been a good trip so far. So thank you for that flexibility. I just want to reiterate a few celebrations at the end of the year. Graduation was outstanding. So credit to Mr. Ashbaugh and all the staff, Mr. Bowser, Sue, and everyone who helped get that together. It was a lot of work, and it couldn't have went better, in my opinion, both as a superintendent, but as a parent as well. It was really great experience. Also, all of the end of the year awards and end of year celebrations that we had at all of our buildings was a great way to end the year. And you know, I think none for me were better than the end of the year staff celebration, recognizing all of our staff members who excelled and went above and beyond. We had more than we could award this year, but we had a few that we did recognize. And thank you to Suzanne and the district leadership team for going through that process and recognizing our people. It was a great way to end the year. And of course, thank you to all of our administrative team for serving lunch to everyone with our backyard barbecue. I think all enjoyed that. And then also, I wanted everyone to know the website. We do have I'll call it a soft launch of the website. We have turned on the new version. There's still a lot of work to be done and still under construction, so please be patient with that, but you can get on there and get an idea of what that's going to look like. And within the next month, you'll see a lot of updates and changes to that. And then last but not least, on just a few items that weren't in your report was on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday last week, President Biden signed Juneteenth in as a federal holiday. We did go ahead and recognize that at a half a day Friday, that we were able to recognize the Juneteenth holiday. And then we had something on the board meeting tonight for members from our social justice club, but with summer and the last minute nature of it all, that did not work out. So I wanted the board to know that we were aware of that and did do our best with as little notice as we had on recognizing that holiday. And then one more piece with the graduations. We've received a lot of feedback, positive feedback with graduation and promotion both. And we've had discussions internally administratively about looking at and considering moving graduation back to campus if there is interest in doing that. I wanted to put that out there for the school board. And also with promotion, if you looked in Mrs. Poole's report, she described what promotion was like this year and how we did that virtually, and would like to continue with that moving forward as well. There was a great deal of positive feedback from both students and families on both of those. Obviously, the high school graduation is much bigger planning, much more logistics go around that. If we go back to campus, if we come back to campus, the thing I will let everyone know that we lucked out on this year, but it's not going to happen every year, is with weather. We have to be prepared to move inside to the rack and make that happen. And there would be some cost with doing that. But before we even work through looking at it, I wanted to throw that out there and see what the feedback from the board was. If we need to look at that some more and bring it back, or no, let's just move back to UIS and go back to the way things were.
I say we need to look into it with the response we got. I think it'd be irresponsible not to at least, do some research and consider it.
I'm a big fan of it on our campus too.
What is the timeline as far as reserving something out at UIS or sort of making that decision?
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Ashbaugh.
He's laughing in the background. So.
Technically, our date is reserved, but we're technically not under contract as of yet. So the contract usually gets signed in the fall, but they do have our date. And I'm going to be honest, I know Dan and I have talked, with school, like example, next year, school gets out May 18th. We're almost wondering if we do talk about coming back to campus, do we want to move graduation up so that it's not 2 weeks after and on a holiday weekend? I don't know, some other things to talk about. So, but we do have the date reserved out there. Us and Williamsville share that day, so we share the cost of setup. So.
What does it look like to have it in the rack, Mr. Ashton?
I would say we would set up the stage on the end. We would put the kids on the floor with the band somehow down on the floor, and possibly also maybe some handicapped seating on the floor. And then people would just be able to sit on both sides. The biggest concern I have, and I know JR will say, we've talked about that, and Brad too, that we need to probably come up with some kind of floor covering because we don't want to damage the main floor and we would have to use it. Some schools have it. Petersburg Porta has one I know they use. Dan just told me the other day that Staunton has one. So I don't know we looked at one about 4 or 5 years ago because, so the graduating class next year right now sits at almost 240. We were kind of wondering about 3 years ago if they would even fit on the stage at UIS. And so we actually went and looked at the Prairie Capital Convention Center, which we didn't like, but we did go look because we already were concerned about the size of that. So.
I think one of the benefits that I saw with this graduation outside, and I think it would have the same benefit in the RAC versus UIS, is that when you have a group of 200 plus students at UIS on the stage, those students who are past the second or third row aren't seen by anyone in the audience, you know, any family members or anything. They're not able to watch their child's reaction or their laughs or their high fives or bumps or whatever with anybody. And watching it on the field, and I think at the rec too, you know, families are able to see their child's celebration, you know, and all of their reactions to the different things as they go along and how they interact with their friends and everybody. So I really liked that about this, and I miss that when it's on the stage at UIS because of the way it's raised, and they're so deep back into that stage and that you can't see most of the students.
Can I ask, what was the logic of originally moving? I mean, I don't have a kid old enough to have gone through that graduation. So what was the logic or the reasoning to go to UIS? Are we going to run into that same problem?
I don't know what the reason was. Do you know when it was moved out there?
This will be my 20th year at Rochester, and we were doing it before I came here.
Okay.
So the principal before me, Mr. Canny, is the one that I think figured it out. I don't know how many years they even did it out there, Bob, before I came.
I was there in
It was-
97.
Yeah.
In 97, you graduated at UIS
Yep.
from Rochester?
Right, we tried it at the Crown Plaza, or whatever its predecessor was, I guess, Holiday Inn East, and we tried it outside, and then we wound up out there.
Well, the bottom line is back then we didn't have the rack. We didn't
Yeah, the
have
rack
two
wasn't
sets of
available.
bleachers that tower above a floor.
Things change.
Yeah,
You
for
know
that
what the
kind of space.
What the capacity difference is between UIS and the RAC?
Pretty similar.
Well, so the JR, what's the capacity of the rack?
With, on the wall, it says 3,100, but that's if you bring in temporary seating. We had a game, a couple of boys regional, we hosted a couple of years ago between Lincoln and Lancaster, so we actually counted the seats because we knew it'd be close. I think it was like 2,100 physical bleacher seats.
So when we go to UIS, they limit us to, we can only give out 1,800 tickets. So what we normally do is take, example, 200 graduates, and they all get 9 tickets. We just divide it, and however many everybody gets, that's how many they get. And then they can't get in if they don't have a ticket. So, I mean, it would be a few more. I would say though, and I've been here now 19 years, I can say we've never filled out there. It's like people grab tickets, but then there's 150 empty seats. It's just how it works.
Isn't this next graduating class though one of the largest?
This is the one, 238 or 37 they're sitting at right now.
They dropped by a couple.
Yeah. So may go back up, you just
Yeah.
never know, right? So. And I will say, when you go to UIS, it feels really formal, but I mean, Dan and I talked afterwards. I thought even though we were outside, it still had a very formal feel to it. The crowd was not hooping in. I mean, it didn't change. I felt like it was still a very formal thing. So.
Okay.
Okay, well, we will continue to do some work and bring back some more details next month. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I like it.
At least we have 3 options.
The last thing that I had that was not in your original report, I sent everyone an email this afternoon. So if you've not had the opportunity to see that, you can reference that at your leisure. There was a meeting at the Illinois State Board of Education had a board meeting where superintendents from DuPage County and some of the other collar counties testified on needs that schools have in order to reopen school, requesting more specific and clear guidance for schools statewide, which resulted in a letter being sent and superintendents asked to sign on. That letter was sent today. It's not going to be sent to the state board until later this week. There was already, I think, 119 signatures when I looked this morning on that letter. And the primary thing that it's looking for, that we're looking for, school districts are clear and specific guidance on social distancing, quarantine, masks, and vaccination records to be able to open schools less than, I think significantly less than 60 days away now. So those are some certain questions that we do need answered. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit here later in the meeting about more testing protocol and quarantines and some of the guidance that we are anticipating surrounding those. And that's all I have for my report. I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
Any yet? Okay. Regarding old business, we have Board of Education committee reports, and I believe the only report we have is the new board member orientation. Mr. Cox and I were at that a couple weeks ago, 1 week ago, with our new board members, and it went really, really well. And in fact, I think Mr. Cox did a really good job of collecting some information, including the most important policies that we as board members get asked about quite often. And I asked him if we can make that available for all board members to have access to and at our fingertips, and just for a refresher for anybody to go through, whether you've been through new board member training 30 years ago, Mr. File, or, last week. So, Mr. Cox, anything to add to that for the new board member training or orientation that we did?
No, the only other thing I would add is the agenda with the links to those documents is in the packet. If you would like it sent out separately, we can do that as well.
We were supposed to do a little personnel update, but Amy hasn't had a chance to look over. I got the document started.
Okay.
But so maybe next month, or we can just informally email a link to the rest of the board.
That sounds good. We can do that. Thank you, Amy. Okay. I should say new business, but I have the three new board members sitting here. I hope you agree that was a good orientation. I just went right over you. That was great.
It was very informative.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Good. All right, new business. Consideration and approval of student handbook updates. Mr. Cox, will you please provide the board with a review of the student handbook updates?
Each year we have committees within the buildings. We have parent feedback when necessary or when needed, especially on bigger changes to the handbooks. And there is board involvement depending again on the types of changes. We requested that all of the administrators give the board a highlight summary of the changes being proposed. I will say one thing that we looked at that Mr. Reed and I discussed earlier today. There were some things that were in there that were COVID specific that I think we're going to pull and put in just like our opening guidance, because those things will change. An example would be masking, for example. Masking is still mandated and required, but we don't know what that will look like, for example, in November. So anything that's COVID specific, I think we're going to pull from our handbook and just put in our reopening or opening guidance, much like we did last year. So with that, I will just open it to see if there are any questions that myself or any of the administrators can answer regarding any specific changes.
I think most of my questions were thoughts on it were related to those sort of things. So I appreciate that you're sort of pulling those COVID specific, because again, it is a school calendar year handbook. And so if those things change, it's nice to have that flexibility to kind of move around. So appreciate it.
Mr. Cox, do you want to hold on this motion until next month then, so that we can get a clean look at that handbook with those things pulled?
It makes no difference to me as long as somebody there, maybe Mrs. Keller, will we be able to have that done for registration?
The board meeting is the week that we're going to open up online registration. So
Okay.
it would still work if you want to wait until the July meeting. That's fine.
That would
We're
still
open up
work? That
online
seems really
registration
tight
soon
for you.
after. Pardon?
I said that seems really tight if we're having a board meeting the week that registration
Right.
opens, but if the
That's our
handbook
goal,
is,
to open it that week.
if
so.
the handbook is ready and those things are pulled, then we should be able to approve and it would still roll.
If you all are comfortable with that.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Want to give it one more look?
I mean, I think I like what Chris and them are talking about with you making like I don't know, it's like an amendment or like a separate book that's just temporary rules. I don't know. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Well, that's what he's talking about
Yeah.
with the reopening guidelines.
Right.
But since we don't know specifically what all's being pulled, I kind of want to wait to vote in
would,
July
yeah.
if that will work for Suzanne. I don't,
Right.
is that going to heavily stress you to wait?
We'll get it done.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. We'll wait on that then. So that item will be reviewed and we'll place that on the July agenda for approval.
Yeah, and to be clear, we talked about that before the board meeting. That's why I put it on for consideration and possible approval, because we knew there could be some questions that we would need to go back and work on over the month. So we were prepared if we needed to have that approval in July.
Okay, good. And next we have approval of bids for parking lot maintenance repair. And Mr. Allwell, will you please provide information regarding those bids for us?
Sure. Sorry I'm dressed like this.
Oh.
We're still doing wrestling. The weirdest thing, I've never got out of a wrestling meet and turned on air conditioning. It's always, I've got to scrape my windows or something. We're at the state and the Illinois Coaches Association are just putting it on at the convention center. So it's packed all week.
Wow.
And we have 2 kids still going.
Good.
So on this parking lot stuff, what has happened in the past, you know, generally we've done it earlier in the year, so we have all our numbers right. But a couple times we've asked the board to approve an educated number based off of our engineer and not to exceed kind of thing. And that number he gave me was 70,000 to do what we want to do. But he said, you know, we might find more cracking that we need to fill. And so we're just asking, I believe 80,000 if you guys could. Now, some of the stuff that we're doing, the big parking lot between the EC1 and the 2-3, we're going to have that all crack filled and resealed and repainted. There's also a playground just north of the EC1 where we do a lot of supply entries into that back thing. And that blacktop edge is just basically crumbled. So we're going to cut that out and extend a sidewalk so it'll last longer and it won't be a trip hazard for deliveries. The next thing that we're going to do is, or asking to do is, and I went around with the engineer to look at every possible thing that we could fix. The RIS's north parking lot where the buses always turn, it's kind of wore out 2 paths where it's just deteriorated and crumbled. So we're going to cut that out, refill it with asphalt, then reseal everything. And while we're there, we're going to fix the 2 playgrounds or reseal the playgrounds that haven't been. We've generally kept those in rotation, but they were pretty good, but these 2 needed. And then we've got an alternate bid that the dumpsters back here at the track, since we have them in a bin to kind of keep it nice, the dump truck or the garbage truck always pulls into the same spot, scoops it up, and it's really knocked down a path. So they've proposed in the alternate to cut out that area and put concrete, which we've done in the past in several spots where that's happened. So those are the things that we're asking to redo. And the engineer feels pretty good about the $70,000 number. He's talked to a couple local contractors who've actually worked out here on our parking lot, so he feels that's pretty good. So we're asking for that. And a couple other projects we're doing. The RIS has a few vents that we need to cover up because every time it rains in a particular direction, our gym floor gets wet. And we've been lucky that it's never really happened on a Sunday where we couldn't fix it or missed it. So, and there's also those snow guards that keep the massive snowfall from sliding all the way off the roof and hitting somebody and hurting them. And those over time have been knocked down due to some heavy snow. So we're going to have them fix that there. And I've noticed we've got a few at the rack that was built at the same time. So I'm going to ask them if they can give me a price to fix that too. We've had a water main that's kind of been leaking out by the track restrooms that provides the water out there, and we need to get that fixed. Several times I've been called late at night where it's just flooded the parking lot, and it's just something that worries me during football games. If it goes bad, we'll be in trouble for a while. And then we're going to fix some sprinkler lines that feed the baseball and softball field that have kind of settled underneath a manhole, and we need to get that fixed. And on the performance contract, they've kind of secured but not yet purchased a lot of the lights that would go in our classrooms. So as soon as everything's signed and ready to go, they're gonna hit the classrooms where the kids would be, where we could work in the hallways between classes or whatever. And I got all the drawings and designs stamped and ready to go for the boilers out there. I've gotten some bids on the tennis courts, and we didn't like the repair they wanted to make, because some of the tennis court poles, when you have to keep the net at a certain height, they're starting to cave in on us, and we need to get that fixed. And then I'm waiting for a bid to get the track repainted, and it's gonna be from the same company who installed it not too long ago. You're supposed to do that every so often, and we're due to get it painted, and it'll be from the same company, like I said, and they'll do some repairs for us, what they see like on a runway of a pole vault. But that's about it. If you guys could help me on the parking lot, that'd be nice. So I don't know how to end this, but that's it.
Those all goals for this summer work?
Yes, and maybe a little bit to the fall.
That's enough expenses, Brad.
What did you say?
That's enough expenses, Brad.
He's over there with his calculator.
I got a question for you. Where the buses have been turning, are you gonna reinforce that so we don't have to do that so often?
I would like to. I asked the guy, and he's like, well, it was just in a spot where it was like, it was seamed up with it, where you can't do the whole thing at once.
Yeah.
And water was getting in where they were turning. So I'll ask him again about that.
Okay.
Maybe.
Is it just where we could move seams so they're not right in
I'm
that
thinking,
spot?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did do that. It would help.
Okay.
Just head and turn.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that'd be my only question.
It's a smart engineer who followed.
Okay,
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to give the superintendent authority to accept the lowest responsible bid for parking lot repair not to exceed $80,000?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Alwalt. And next, we have the approval of waste management and recycling bids. Mr. McDermott, will you please provide information regarding these bids?
Sure. What was in your packet gives you our current pricing, and we are currently under contract with Waste Management. It was coming due here at the end of this fiscal year, so we bid that service out. And as you can see, Waste Management's pricing came in much less than Republic Services bid did, as well as they came in under their current pricing. So our recommendation is to accept the Waste Management bid, and that is a 2-year agreement with Waste Management. They'll keep that pricing for 2 years.
It seems unusual that the discrepancy is almost like 50%. Did that seem unusual to you?
The discrepancy of
The
what?
pricing, Waste Management's came in almost half.
I honestly don't know why Republic came in so much higher, but I mean, Waste Management's been here for 18 years. So, I mean, they know
Yeah.
what it costs.
Yep.
So they might have had the upper hand in terms of knowing what their profit margin's going to be.
Okay.
My only question would be, and I don't know that it would ever matter, but they do have some higher prices on their on-call services. Do we ever feel like would that ever make any difference? I know it should make up $1,500, but would it make up a difference?
I mean, not in my opinion, because the on-call, we only do that during the summer months.
Okay.
Because this pricing is 10 months, and then we basically shut them down in the summer.
Okay.
And when it's needed, that's when we call them to empty, because obviously we're not producing what we do during the school year.
Right. I just see they bumped their on-call services a
Mhm.
lot more. So I didn't know if that would, and it's a little bit more than Republic. So I didn't know
Right.
if that would ever make up the difference or not. So.
In terms of looking at the overall total cost, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just gonna make them carry their trash home.
Take
Dan's
your trash
gonna
with
take all of his trash home.
All right, is there a motion to accept Waste Management Services, the lowest responsible bidder for garbage and recycling services as presented?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. File,
yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade.
Yes.
Next on the agenda, we have the COVID-19 Testing Support Intergovernmental Agreement with University of Illinois. And Mr. Cox, will you please provide information regarding the COVID-19 testing support?
Yes, thank you.
Ready.
Okay, so just some background here. The Shield, Illinois, the COVID testing through Shield was something we were looking at in October and November. We saw that as a good next step, actually a very positive next step, but it just was not cost affordable. At the time, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 per test. And to be effective, at minimum, you're to test once per week. So you can do the math, and that adds up to be a very significant amount of money that schools just could not afford. Here in recent weeks, it was approved that or recent months, I should say, it was approved that all Tier 1 and Tier 2 school districts, junior high through high school, were going to receive the COVID testing, Shield testing for free. That has now been opened up to all pre-K through 12 students for free in Tier 1 and Tier 2 school districts. We are a Tier 2 school district, so we would receive the Shield testing for free. The Shield testing is a PCR test, and we see this now as the logical next step of where we would go with our COVID protocol and our mitigation protocol, and to continue to keep kids in school and maximize our in-person learning to the greatest extent possible with as few disruptions as possible. Toward the end of the year, while things went really well, our biggest hurdle and obstacle was that of quarantining and our close contact quarantining. Just a little bit about this PCR test and how it differs from something like our Binax Now that we do. The PCR is something we would do routine, as little as once per week, but what we're recommending to do after meetings with the Shield team is twice per week. And 50% of our spread, of COVID spread, is with asymptomatic individuals. And these particular tests can even detect a positive individual up to 1 to 2 days before the infection phase. So if we can get individuals more quickly identified, remove them, we should see even less spread than what we already had. And we had a very successful year as that was. One thing that I wanted to highlight that I had put in your report that I had wrong, it's changed. Early on, Shield was wanting districts to commit to testing up to 50% of their unvaccinated individuals. That was a target, not an absolute, but that's been dropped. It is the Shield team is wanting districts to be able to commit to testing 100 unvaccinated individuals, which we feel very strongly we'll be able to do without much trouble. Now, what that means is if we don't get 100, it doesn't mean we can't do the testing. It just means how we administer the testing will change. Currently, our recommendation is have the Shield Illinois team actually conduct, collect, and deliver the test to the lab. All that the district would do is actually provide the space. If we would drop down to a low enough number that it was not worth the while or didn't make sense for their team to come out and collect and administer the test, we could do the test ourselves, and Shield would pay the district $10 per test for us to conduct the test ourselves. Also, anyone can be trained to do the test. It does not necessarily fall on our nursing staff. What we're looking at after several meetings with Shield representatives and pending board approval, we would sit down and have more meetings with the Shield team and the logistics team. But what we're recommending is that testing will be completed on a voluntary basis as an opt-out program, meaning that individuals will be automatically enrolled unless they choose to opt out. I would also note that anyone can opt out, vaccinated or unvaccinated. However, vaccinated individuals can choose to continue to participate in this program if they so choose. They may have personal reasons, family reasons that they want to do that. The test will be administered, collected, and delivered by a lab via a third party through Shield. The district provides the space. Students pre-K through 12 do have access to the test. We are recommending tests be conducted twice per week Also, faculty and staff will have access to the test. What we're hearing now, or what's being reported now and in draft status with IDPH and has been pieces of their meetings, individuals who are double vaccinated or individuals who are shield tested twice per week will not have to quarantine if they're determined to be a close contact of 3 to 6 feet, as long as masks are used correctly. Currently, the quarantine is 6 feet plus. At this point, they would not have to quarantine if they were 3 to 6 feet, if they're double vaccinated or if they take or participate in the shield testing program. The last piece is the test would be delivered to a lab right here in Springfield. We would see results in under 12 hours, but frankly, we think we would see them a lot sooner, as does shield, because of the proximity we are to the lab. Positive individuals in the district will be notified no later than 6 a.m. the morning following the test, and shield does contact the individuals. The district's not responsible. That's a big change for us as well, and something very appealing to us. There's also an option to open the testing to community, to our families and to community partners, but we would rather wait on that and do that as a second phase. Once we got this under our belt and learned how to do it with our students, then we would consider opening up to community partners. Examples would be our daycare facilities, where our students interact a great deal. Our first responders could have access to it if they so chose, but that would be something for another day. And I think I'll close this with the most important thing on this is it's really helps us move forward, but it's also choice. It gives individuals a choice. If they do not want to be vaccinated, it gives them the ability to continue to monitor their own health care. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions the board may have.
Would staff count towards the minimum 100, or is that students only?
It would count, yes. And one thing that we're still looking at is staff being able to potentially test out of protocol. I don't know, or I'm sorry, test out of quarantine. I don't know if that's going to be allowed or not, but that is something that we've been in discussions on. And I forgot what I was going with that, but that's what we're looking at with that.
If the kids or staff get a positive test, is there any change in quarantine? Is it still 2 weeks? Are we back to a different time frame on that then?
Nothing's changed there.
Okay.
Nor has masking. Masking has not changed yet for schools either. You'll see that letter I emailed earlier today. We're needing some clear guidance on those items because they have changed. They are fluid in other areas. So we're seeing if there's going to be some changes in schools. And I remember the thought I just lost on that was there has to be some incentive for us to go through and do this. Something had to change, and our health department is on board with the reduced quarantine or not having to quarantine from 3 to 6 feet. It's still impossible though for us to keep kids 3 feet apart. So quarantine still is a reality, but it would significantly reduce the quarantine.
Do you know if any this has changed anything for athletes, or are they kind of outside? Obviously, everything's still in flux, but I know it seemed the common theme seemed to be a lot of kids chose to stay remote because of fears of quarantine. Yep. Would this help? Obviously, the choosing remote without a real reason is different anyway, but would this help kind of alleviate some of those concerns?
Absolutely. Twofold. There's a lot of interest there for that, but there's twofold to that point. This coming year, people will not be able to just opt out due to concerns or fears or not wanting to quarantine. ISB did state on record that in-person learning is required this year, that schools have to go back to that. The only piece where you would not be, where you could not require that people be in person is that they went through a process very similar to the medically homebound process, or if they're not eligible to be vaccinated, would be another instance, or if they were quarantined, obviously under quarantine order by the health department and by the Illinois Department of Public Health. So we're going to have more people in person, thus potentially raising the concerns for quarantine. The other piece, why we're wanting to do a pilot this summer, is to get some of those positives identified and get that taken care of before our seasons start with our student athletes. Because once the seasons start and we start doing this type of testing, or if we have no testing in place, we run a much higher risk of quarantining athletes, teams, or even postponing or canceling seasons. We were relatively lucky this school year. We had very minimal quarantines or shutting down seasons, but it did happen a couple of times over the year, but it was very minimal. So this would have a huge impact on that. And then the other piece of looking at how that not only would impact our student athletes, our extracurricular activities, but just our student body in general. The first month of testing, you are going to see a little higher rate because we're going to be getting those asymptomatic individuals or identifying those asymptomatic individuals. In the slideshow that's in your packet, you will see the statistics on many of the universities across the state who are using those, including the University of Illinois. After the first month, those tests, the positive tests dropped down below 1%, which would be really incredible for us and would help us continue to move forward this school year.
Any other questions?
I think Dennis is trying to talk, but I'm not hearing him.
Okay.
In our letter to, from the superintendents, they didn't really point out that just because school starts the end of August, sports starts back the 1st of August. And I know you mentioned how close we are to a lot of students being involved. So we're in a hurry up mode there, no matter what. Get through those asymptomatic people and get them cleared, I guess you'd call it.
And this is an option, is what we need to emphasize too, for families who are not comfortable with this. That this is an opt-out program.
And I'd like to emphasize or repeat something Dan pointed out. You know, one of the reasons we had a limited number of outbreaks, especially at high school, is because we had a limited number of students here. We were at like 50% capacity. And now we're going to be closer to 100%. And the chances of having an outbreak are increasing with that. So this will help.
Yeah.
Does it end December 31st of 21? In the
What do you
The shield,
yes.
December 31st, 21.
and it could be extended.
Okay.
Mr. Jewell, what were you going to say?
Let's say, again, this shield program does not change any of the masking requirements. It doesn't change any of the other protocols. Those are set at a different level. This is just an option for kids to be able to stay in school. I think that was the goal of any concerned parent was, I want my kid in school. This is a tool to help keep those kids from being quarantined because their buddy sitting next to them ended up testing positive. So, like I said, it's optional. You don't have to participate,
right?
If you so choose, and so.
And to be clear, it's 3 to 6 feet. They would not have to quarantine. If they were under 3 feet, or if we weren't wearing masks correctly, then there could still be quarantine. So I don't want to mislead and let people or give people the assumption that there's going to be absolutely no quarantines, because there will be, and until guidance continues to evolve and change.
So if one student A is sitting next to student B and student A gets his test and tests positive, if student B was within 3 to 6 feet away and masked, he doesn't have to go then into quarantine. Is that the way I understand it?
Correct.
As long as he was participating in the
As
shield.
long as he's in the shield program. Okay.
Or double vaccinated.
Right.
And therein lies the interest, I think, in I know the Illinois Department of Public Health and our local health departments, including in Sangamon County, are very interested in this. There's been a great deal of success. There have been pilot districts with this, and it's went incredibly well in the pilot districts, and some of their information is in your packet. It's just to help us move forward. So there's some incentive there with the quarantines and with the vaccinations, because getting people, getting them some relief on quarantine certainly is a positive. And it makes there's some incentive for us. That was one of my biggest questions, was if we're going to do this and go through the logistics and think through of how to administer this as a school district, we've got to have some relief too. The quarantines were just as hard on us as a school district as it was families. Believe me on that.
Yeah, and I don't think we mentioned it yet. I know 186 just approved the use of the shield testing in their district. And also that this is something that whether you opt out or you're in, to start with, you can change later if that's your prerogative as a family or as a parent.
And as a school district, we can as well. Anything, if we see something's not working and we want to ramp it up or pull it back, we can do that. We're not committed to anything at this point. If we decide that it's better for us to administer the test ourselves, we could do that. Of course, we would much rather have that third party come through to do it. I have some questions about how they're going to pull that off in many school districts across the state, but that's for them to figure out, not for us. And I do think we have an advantage because of our proximity. I think we are the Springfield's the lab farthest south currently. I think there's going to be more labs opened up, but I believe there's only 4 labs, maybe 5 in the state, but having one in our backyard is certainly helpful.
And I thought of one more thing. This is recommended by our nurses also. This is a program that they recommend.
What is, where's the liability stand if I'm assuming we're sending out sensitive health information through a third party. We all know that nothing is secure 100%. Where do we stand with that using a third party? We have no control over their protocols. And I know it says that, I kind of read through the contract, but it says that they're going to do their best, but is there anything to talk about that?
There is. There was actually a very, very extensive set of laws passed a few years ago that we've been working very hard because it's all coming to fruition as we speak. In fact, July 1, we have to have some things done. So our IT department has been working very hard on it. Tavis, I can't see him, but Tavis is probably shaking his head yes in the background. It's the SOPA, or the Student Online Personal Privacy Protection Act, and we have to have agreements in place with anyone where data could be leaked. Those agreements not only have to be in place between us and the vendor, they also have to be posted to our website, which are all going up. They have to be uploaded to a state form. So it'd be no different than us working with, for example, Mr. Hanna, it'd be like us working with Hazel Health, where we do the online, the telehealth for our students. There's a lot of sensitive information there as well. So it'd be very similar to how we handle the privacy with Hazel Health, or through Skyward. There's a lot of information on Skyward too. When you think about all the things you input, when you go through registration this year, look at all the stuff you input about your family and everything. There's a lot of sensitive information. So we would handle this just the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in a conversation I had with Mr. Cox earlier, we talked about how to utilize this without singling out kids or disclosing private health decisions or broadcasting that in any way. And I think one of the things he said was that, with this approved and them starting to work with Shield on this, the administrative team and the nurses would be working this summer to find the best way to, to work through the registration for this, the opt-in or opt-out, and how to handle it at the district.
And we believe the cleanest way is to treat everybody the same, vaccinated or non-vaccinated. We just put everybody in and allow you to opt out if you so choose to opt out, because then we don't have to send different information. As I pointed or discussed with Dr. Magulius, even individuals in their own home may have different, one child may be vaccinated while another child's not. So we can't just depend on, families even being all the same. So we thought if we just treated everybody the same, let people make their decisions based on their personal needs, then we could provide that that resource to them.
Any other comments or questions? And does the board desire to make a motion to approve this intergovernmental agreement with the University of Illinois for COVID-19 testing support?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you. Call the roll.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Hanna,
Yes.
Dr. Magulius,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade,
Yeah.
Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have closed session. However, our personnel report is included in your packet for review, and it's pretty straightforward. If there are any questions regarding the personnel report, we'll convene into closed session. If there are no questions regarding the personnel report, we will just move into approving that. Are there any questions that we need to move into closed session for? No? Mr. Gade? No? Okay. All right, then. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Gade,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Magoulias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Yes.
Forgot she wasn't here.
Tongue-tied there. Okay, and we have miscellaneous. Any items from our board members for miscellaneous? Yes.
Just a couple of exciting things, and I was sharing a little bit before the meeting, but I would like to tell everybody that Dennis File was celebrated at the Capillary Career Center board meeting the other night for serving 25 years on that board. He got a beautiful engraved clock, and very unusual to have somebody serve that long on that board, and you can tell he's really liked out there, so I wanted to celebrate that.
That's really wonderful.
And then I was reelected resolutions chair for the Abe Lincoln Division of Illinois Association of School Boards, but
Congrats on
what's
that.
really fun is Amy Johnson is now the chair of our division. So we've got 2 Rochester Reps as officers.
We are
So,
very well represented.
yes,
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that service too.
I think Amy's going to be great. I'm excited.
I have a letter. I'm going to have to pull this off to read, I think. I have a letter here that Mr. Butcher, who just retired, asked me to read at our board meeting tonight. So this is from Mark Butcher. To my friends at Rochester School District, Abraham Lincoln made the following statement in one of his speeches. It is said an Eastern monarch once charged his wise men to invent him a sentence to be ever in view and which should be true and appropriate in all times and situations. They presented him the words, and this too shall pass away. How much is it expresses, how chastening in the hour of pride, how consoling in the depths of affliction. I'm sorry, I can't read today. How consoling in the depths of affliction. I have lived 42 years of my 68 years at Rochester School District, 12 years as a student and 30 years as a teacher. Our 4 children have graduated from Rochester schools. Our 6 grandchildren will someday all be enrolled here. In 10 years, there will be Butcher kids in all 4 grades of the high school. I am so thankful that I was allowed to spend my life here. At one point in my career, I thought that I wanted to teach full-time at the college level. That was probably a weakness in my pride and ego. I am glad that it never worked out. On the college level, you may have a student for a semester and then they are gone. On the high school level, you have students for a full year and perhaps multiple years. You may have siblings in class and also get to know the parents. I have been given the honor of lasting friendships with so many people. I have been humbled by the wonderful way in which I have been treated. I have had wonderful coworkers and great bosses. It seems a strange coincidence that a boy I had in 8th grade math is now on the school board, and for a few weeks was my boss. Teachers need to be nice to kids because you never know where they may end up. So I want everyone, past and present, affiliated with the Rochester School District to know my genuine and heartfelt thanks for a wonderful life. Till we meet again, Mark Butcher.
Oh, that was sweet.
Yes. Okay. Anything else for miscellaneous? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 7:20.